Okay, so thank you so much from the CWCT team representing here tonight. We have myself, Chrissy Duncan, Stephen Ryder, and Rex Mudge. We are all program managers for this program, each of us at our respective universities. I represent UNC Charlotte. Chrissy Duncan represents Ivy Tech Community College. Stephen Ryder represents University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. And Rex Mudge, our main presenter for this evening, with many years of experience in human resources and in academia, who'll be going through the majority of our workshop tonight on resume and interviews, is representing Purdue Northwest, the main grantee of this National Security Agency National Center of Academic Excellence grant that you are all members of and are currently working on your certificate through this program. So I want to first of all say thank you for choosing our program. All of us here, our biggest measure of success is for you all, whether you are transitioning military, you're a veteran, or you are not a member of the United States military community. And I just want to thank you for choosing our program. We believe that this is one of the best programs out there for you to be able to enter the cybersecurity workforce. We've developed 3 different tracks, as you all know, that contain a variety of industry recognized certifications. And between our world-class instructors, our tutors, our virtual system we have set up, and the work that we program managers put in every day, we believe that we've set you up to be in a position of success. But I want you all to know that the 4 of us up here, I'm saying up here because we're probably at the top of your screen in Zoom because we have our cameras on. We're here to help you. So after tonight's workshop, if you have questions, if you want to talk to us about anything that happened, if you just have concerns about your transition into the industry, please reach out. We'll do the best that we can to answer your questions, or we'll point you in the direction of either one of our partners or someone that can answer that question. We are all civil servants and we are stewards of this program, and we all have the same core belief that we want to help you get a better job or upskill in your current job. That's why we chose to join this program. I mean that with sincerity, and that's why we continue to do the things we do, including putting on our thing tonight. So I hope you get a lot out of tonight. Before I turn over to Rex, I just have a quick kind of thing I'd like to talk about briefly, and hopefully in a future workshop such as this, a fireside chat, if you will, an homage to the great Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We would like to talk a little about LinkedIn, but for the interest of time tonight, I just want to encourage all of you to make a LinkedIn profile if you do not have one. Over 90% of employers use LinkedIn as the primary means of their hiring process. And that's a pretty important stat. So tonight you're going to learn about how to absolutely kill your interview, and you're going to learn how to prep your resume and a bunch of other helpful tools Rex will be going through. Again, this is a man with many years of experience in this industry. He has a lot to share. If you've been in an orientation before, you've heard him briefly. Live transcription. I'll try and turn that on. Sorry, I said a participant asked for transcription. I think I enabled it. I haven't seen that before, so apologize. Rex has a lot of experience in that sector, but in addition to resumes and interviews, I cannot stress this enough. Sorry, it popped up again. All right, live transcription is on. I have not seen it on Zoom, so forgive me for that break. Who can see this transcript? This reminds me of grad school. Oh, my computer has the text of what I'm saying at the bottom. Okay, forgive me. I've never seen that feature on Zoom before. So we do have a transcript going for tonight. Okay, you can see the transcript. So that's great. That's helpful for folks that can't hear me or could use that. So again, I just want to stress the importance of LinkedIn. If you don't have a profile, make sure that you create one at some point in this program. If you have questions about what that looks like and making a competitive profile, choosing the right profile picture, adding a background photo, turning your summary into a story, growing your network, listing your relevant skills, and spotlighting the things that you have to offer to a potential employer, please reach out to me. I'm by no means an expert on LinkedIn, but I have learned from some of the best, and I can absolutely point you in the right direction of folks who share a lot of great content on LinkedIn to help you to be able to make a very competitive and very attractive profile to a recruiter. Again, that's not the goal of tonight's discussion. That's not the main topic, but I wanted to plug that in. I also wanted to do a quick plug for our June 2nd career fair that's going to be running from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time. And that's going to be held over Zoom. And it will include 1 hour of guest speakers, followed by 2 hours of 30-minute breakout sessions with employers and resource groups. Mr. Ryder will be talking about that at the latter end of tonight's workshop. But again, I wanted to at least have a placeholder on your calendars, though you've probably seen some communication through email about that. Again, Steve Olson here. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I'm going to turn over to Rex, and he's going to be taking you through a presentation for this evening. Rex, while I'm talking, feel free to go ahead and pull up that presentation, make sure you can share. Excellent. And again, Rex is a program manager for Purdue Northwest. He is an instructor. He is a professor. He has many years of experience in human resources, and he is very happy and excited to be able to share some of his expertise with you all tonight. With that being said, I'm going to go on mute. Rex, you go ahead and take the show. And again, thank you so much for choosing to come to our very first CWCT Fireside Chat.
So I hope everybody can hear me. And with that, I just want to let everybody know that everybody involved in the CWCT program, the two Steves and Chrissy and even Bill Warden here who's on, and everybody involved in the program, they want you to be successful. Okay. And so we're doing things beyond sort of what the grant is. Personally, I want you to be successful. And the reason being is that, and I tell this to my students too, I want you to be successful so that you can find that job that is challenging to you, rewarding to you, and it's also going to pay you big amounts of compensation. And the reason I say that is so that you'll pay lots of taxes, which then will help support us baby boomers in our retirement age when we look for the government to help us. So I want you to earn as much money as you possibly can and pay those taxes. So again, my name's Rex Mudge. I got my email address up here, my background, been a senior level HR leader for many years, different companies. I was involved in recruitment, selection, retention, performance management, succession planning, arbitration, discharge. Basically, I was directing the employment process for a number of these organizations from what I call beginning to end. So today's employment landscape, though, it's a whole lot different than it was 10, 15 years ago. Today, it's all that social media that's driving it that Steve alluded to earlier. Some quick facts. Employers used to hire based on degree requirements. I call that degree inflation. That's where every job had to have a degree, and that was part of the job description. And you needed that just to get in the door. Well, currently there's such a demand for talent, and the supply is certainly significantly less. And let me give you a quick example. In the cybersecurity field, cybersecurity openings in the US, there's about 597,000, and only currently there's enough cybersecurity workforce workers to fill 68% of the jobs. So you can see that there's a huge sort of disparity between supply and demand, which is going to be in favor of the employees, the applicants. So right now there's a structural reset that's occurring. Since the supply is so very lopsided, more employers are suspending that degree requirement as sort of that first hurdle into the employment process, particularly middle management, IT sector jobs, and they're more going into favoring their hiring focus on demonstrated skills, competencies, appetite for knowledge, continuous learning, and sort of those soft skills. And all that's going to allow a lot of applicants who've been overlooked because they didn't have that specific degree to pursue other career paths without necessarily having that degree. So that being said, still a lot of the most sought after employers are still holding on to that you needed the degree. But employers are looking at investing in what they call future proofing their employees. And as Steve mentioned, it's about upskilling, it's about up-leveling as part of this retention effort, creating different pathways for employers to grow, sort of this enriched engagement process employers are trying to create to help retention, reduce turnover. LinkedIn showed that 21% increase in their job postings where they were advertising skills and responsibilities instead of requirements and qualifications. Think about that. Employers are looking for skills and responsibilities. So today's hiring is based on what the candidate's future potential is and not your past history, because yesterday's solutions, they're going to be stale today. So your resume, let's quickly talk about that. Everyone talks about, well, how do I build a good resume? You know, what's a good resume look like? Well, I've always said resumes are like trying to find the best spaghetti sauce, the best insurance company, best movies. Everyone's got their own idea. So my idea is, let's keep it simple. Let's avoid all those borders, the colors, the different fonts, the different styles, the underlining, the highlighting, and the bolding. And basically, what you want to do with your resume is at the very beginning, you've got this informative header, and that'll detail who you are, your name, your location. You don't have to put down your home address. You can put down the city and state, or you can put down your full address, your phone number, email address. Now, let me caution you about the email address. And I can tell you that I've received many resumes where the email address was peterparty@gmail, or hotbod@gmail, or partyboy@gmail. So you want to make sure your email addresses that your employers are going to be looking at and potentially sending you information and what have you, that the email address is appropriate for employers, not for your friends, but for your employers. So you may want to take a look at that and make sure it's appropriate. And then you're going to be writing a technical resume. So the priority there is you have to relate your background to the specific position in which you're applying. You have to customize your resume to each job, each company. No longer does one resume fit all jobs. You have to study the job posting and then adjust your resume accordingly. So what I would suggest is you closely read that job posting to see what the company's looking for, and then tailor your tech resume. Pick out the important keywords, the phrases, and incorporate those from the job description into your resume, so you can make or you can illustrate those connections between what the employer is looking for, what the employer's needs are, and your capabilities, your skills. You want to mirror the language using that job description with your own individual skill sets and experiences, and start using action verbs. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but you want to use action verbs because they catch the eye of the reviewer. And again, it creates some life in that resume. So if you see something listed on the job description or the job posting that talks about a skill or an experience or an ability, you can trust that that's going to be a critical component to the job. And so it should be clearly represented on your resume if you honestly can do that. If you have some of that experience, you need to post that on your resume. Many large companies are using these computer programs, and they'll sift through the resumes long before even a human eye looks at them. So, and what they're looking for is they're looking for the right words, the keywords that are included in that job description, that job posting, and looking at your resume and to see if there's enough keywords in there to allow that resume to go on to the next step in the hiring process. And again, they're using that artificial intelligence. Interesting to note, as a side note though, artificial intelligence screening items are now under the scrutiny of the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They have signaled that they're going to delve into artificial intelligence tools that contribute to the bias in screening applicants. They're finding out that a lot of these artificial intelligence tools have built-in biases that could potentially be screening out applicants. So EEOC is going to start looking into that, and we'll see where that goes. I suspect there'll be lots of litigation coming. I am froze up here. There we go. So the resume, lead with your experience. Recruiters reviewing your tech resume, they only are going to glance at it for a few seconds or a few minutes. They're going to scan it from the top down. When you look at a resume, you always look at the top and you work yourself down. So what you want to do is you want to show yourself in the best favor you can. Right after your heading, you'll have a personal summary. And according to Indeed, you are twice as likely to hear back from a hiring manager if you have that personal summary on your resume. Again, they're looking top down. They've only got a couple couple seconds to look at your resume so that summary can help sort of attract their attention. Think of these summaries as like a few sentences long. It's a snapshot of what you are professionally. It highlights your skills, your certs, your certification, your achievement, your professional progressions. What are you capable of? What are you qualified to do? What are you searching for in the job? And again, that's in that summary. And basically what I say kind of echoes that 30-second elevator speech in sort of a narrative way. And you say, well, what's an elevator speech? And if I can move this down one more. The resume elevator speech, an elevator speech, that's that clear, it's a brief message, it's a commercial about you. It communicates who you are, what you're looking for, how you can benefit a company or an organization. It's typically about 30 seconds. That's the time it takes for people to get into an elevator and ride it to the top or the bottom of the building. And that 30-second elevator speech, it can be real beneficial. You go to a career fair, you're standing in line with all these other individuals, you meet the recruiter and they say, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. That's a great time to deploy that elevator speech. I guarantee you, someday you're going to be at Home Depot early in the morning on Saturday, looking for paint colors or whatever. And of course, you're not going to be dressed up because nobody gets dressed up to go to Home Depot. And you're going to bump into somebody that you knew or previous supervisor or whatever, and they're going to ask you, hey, what's going on? Tell me about yourself. What's going on? That's a great time to talk about that elevator speech. Or you're going to bump into a friend that you haven't seen for a while. Well, that's the time to push that elevator button. And you have to practice that elevator speech. Practice, practice, practice. You'll hear me talk about that throughout this. And when you're talking about that elevator speech, you don't end it by saying, hey, and I'm interested in a job. Do you have any jobs available, or do you know where there's any jobs? Because what that does is it creates this obligation that the individual now has to respond to you. So typically, if you say, well, are there any jobs available? They can say no, end of obligation, end of the relationship, as opposed to you give them that 30-second speech and then you ask them, could I send you my resume? And then feel free to send it to anyone you think that I might be a good fit. Again, I'm not asking you for a job. I'm just asking you to hold on to my resume and feel free to pass it forward. It's kind of like getting a business card. I've got a drawer full of business cards. Somebody hands you a business card. They went through the effort of building and printing the business card and they hand it to you. So I feel an obligation. I got to hang on to it. I can't throw it away. Can't tell you how many times I got a business card, walked by many trash cans, wound up coming home, putting it in the drawer along with all the other business cards. Again, that's sort of like that elevator speech. The internet offers a ton of examples to create that framework for that 30-second speech. So you should have that. You should be able to practice that and be able to deploy that at any time. So practice, practice, practice. So the resume, list your relevant work experience. Okay, you've got the heading, you got the summary. Now you have to list your work experience. And that's that section on the resume. And it's really important, particularly if you're applying for that technical job. You don't need to outline the details about the companies you worked for necessarily. This is an opportunity where you can use that section to discuss what you've achieved in your previous roles. Again, you don't have to list the employers. In that work experience section, list your most impressive accomplishments instead of tasks and responsibilities. And you want to use those action verbs. So an example could be spearheaded the development of a new user interface, or I mentored a team of 6, or I led an ad hoc group researching software operations. I collaborated on the development of new software interfaces. Again, you're starting off using those action verbs for each of your experiences. You coordinated, you initiated, you implemented, you managed. That brings a lot of life and sort of energy to an application. Let me show you what. So action verbs: achieved, amplified, deciphered, decreased, exceeded, overhauled, shattered, steered, streamlined, supervised, surpassed, accomplished, analyzed, assembled, developed, executed, expanded, facilitated. Or you can go to this particular website and it's going to give you the additional 158 action verbs that you can use in building your experience on your resume. Okay, rather than me go through all 158. And again, you use action verbs to talk about the things that your experiences, your skills, your knowledge. And again, it creates excitement, it creates energy on your resume. So on the resume, Remove out-of-date work history beyond 10 years or the last anything beyond the last 3 or 5 jobs. Add your education, your additional skills, your certs, your certificates, your awards. Include your volunteer work. A lot of people discount that, but volunteer work is an opportunity to showcase your skills and abilities, and relatable skills are transferable. You know, if I'm a great planning, organizing, detail person in a volunteer organization, I suspect those skills are very transferable into other organizations, particularly if you've worked in nonprofit organizations or volunteer organizations. Again, it's another different set of skills in working with those individuals. And for the folks that have been in the military or law enforcement or even first responders, I mean, think about that. Your activities, your experiences are all under crisis management sort of skills, and they're transferable. So you may not have worked for an organization, but if you were in the military and you were having to deal with decision-making or planning, organizing or whatever, you certainly can talk about that as part of that skill. So, and interesting, I know too many stay-at-home moms who are better at planning than their working spouses. Okay, they can handle a lot of different things going on. So again, if you're capable of planning, organizing in different organizations, it's all transferable. In addition, on your resume, you don't need references. Don't put down your hobbies, your interests, your personal status items. Not interested that you own 3 dogs from a rescue shelter. Nobody cares about that. References, who puts a reference down on a resume? Who's going to give them a black eye? Nobody. So references, what I would say on your resume is just put the one line, credible references provided on demand. Again, the employer may want references. They'll ask you for them. And at that point in time, you can provide them. So a couple of referrals. Check out this particular site in terms of looking at creating technical resume. You can also, there's another site here for technical resume examples. I'd also suggest, if you can go to the library, you can buy the book. It's called Don't Use a Resume, Use a Qualifications Brief by Richard Lanthorpe. It's a paperback, it's about 35, 40 pages. You can go out onto Amazon or eBay, and if you pay more than $9 for it, you paid too much. And then there's also an individual that Steve R, Steve O, Chrissy, myself, his name is Dr. Ajer. He has a LinkedIn profile here, and he does an awful lot with tech and cybersecurity people in terms of resume interviewing, LinkedIn particularly. So he's another referral reference that you could be using. So how to prepare for that successful interview? Okay, you put together that resume. It's well crafted. It frames your experiences within those sections. It highlights your valuable, your relevant competencies, skills, and it's all done before that employer even lays eyes on you. So that resume is going to create a bit of a demand because it's going to showcase you in a way that hiring manager can quickly scan it and see. So you've got this resume. The question you get then is, how do I get into that sandbox with employers? How do I get employers to see me? Well, that's probably going to be another fireside chat. Okay, but I want to talk about the successful interviewing techniques. Social media, your social media presence needs to be sanitized. So some employers take advantage of this by screening applicants through their social media and other web-based research. I know organizations during the interview process would ask you, this is a few years ago, do you have a Facebook account? And everyone had one at that time. And they'd say, well, let's go look at it. So you would ask the individual to open up their Facebook account during the interview. So the applicant had 2 choices, yes, and hopefully there's nothing out there that's going to be creating a problem, or they can say no, and you can guess kind of how the temper went with that interview after that. So it got to be so pervasive that I think there's 22 states that have passed the laws barring employers from doing that. And in Illinois, they bar employers from demanding employees or applicants to reveal their usernames or passwords, which are linked to their social networking site. It prohibits employers from forcing employees to display their social networking profiles for review. I know that there was a law firm that I worked with, and they were looking at hiring a graduate from law school from Notre Dame. Very esteemed, very educated, all this. They were ready to offer him a 6-figure job. This was years ago. And for whatever reason, they decided to go look at his Facebook. They looked out there and he had a picture of many pictures, but he had a picture of when he was in Mexico for, I don't know, a vacation or undergrad work, and he took some time out. There was a picture of him with a bottle of tequila in one hand and some smoking ganja in the other. The employer decided they weren't going to offer him the job because of that picture. Okay, whether or not he was inviting in it or whatever, they used that social media as part of a process for eliminating or considering candidates. So be aware of that. Be aware of your social media. You know, employers can go out there and look. So arrive 15 minutes early. Scope it out the day before if you can. The reason you get there early is so you can ask to use the restroom. Why? Because you want to go in and look in the mirror. Are you looking okay? Is the tie right? Is the the blouse okay? Is there anything that you need to adjust? You also want to take care of the any sort of natural questions that come up in terms of, you want to relieve yourself, because consider this, you're going to be under pressure for the next hour and a half while you're interviewing. So you want to be as comfortable as you can going in. While you're there, observe others, look at the dress code, look at the physical environment. Are people communicating with each other? That's going to give you a little sense of sort of what this organization may be like. Bring extra copies of your resume, because if you get passed on to another interview, there's a good chance that the HR or the recruiter didn't pass a resume on to the next person. Bring a notepad, pencil, and have your questions about the organization written out. Key, you stand tall. Okay, you act confident with a firm handshake. You make sure your eye contact is there, wait and ask to be seated. And they usually start off by saying, tell me a little bit about you. Well, you want to stay focused on your past work, and you want to talk about what's interesting in the field. But what you don't want to do is when they do this sort of small talk is tell me a little bit about yourself. They're not interested in how many children you had, your hobbies, your marital status. So stay focused on the job and use maybe your elevator speech. Okay. So mistakes during the interview. Yeah, I hear this all the time. I just wish I could have expressed myself better. I think I could have done a better job of answering the questions about my abilities, my experiences. Or they say, you know what, I didn't plan enough for the interview. I was so worried about, they're going to ask me questions, I don't know what. Or, you know what, I wasn't prepared and I took way too long a time to explain myself. Or I was so nervous, I couldn't exert any control over this whole process. And I was just nervous due to my lack of pre-planning, lack of confidence. So a couple remedies. You can go out on the internet and answer those 1,700 interview questions that are posed out there, and you can practice that. Or you can narrow down those 1,700 questions down to 100, and you can practice that. Or you can look at seizing the moment. There's a whole lot of factors in preparing for the interview that you can exert a modest amount of control over that natural anxiety you have, and you can present yourself in the best manner so you can nail that interview, so you can get that job, pay lots of taxes, and the rest of us can, retire in comfort. So the main focus of your interview relies on your ability to deliver the goods. Your knowledge, your skills, your ability, KSAs, presenting that information clearly, the best light you can by telling your story, taking control of the unknown by using a well-planned format. Our culture is built on telling stories. We're interested in hearing when people tell stories. So in this particular format, you're going to be telling a story.
Hey Rex, can I interrupt for just a quick question? You're giving a lot of really great information. I want to just pause here really quickly on the interview part. So in this new world of, even tonight, we're on a Zoom call. I'd love to be there in person with everyone here. But especially in the IT and cybersecurity sector, we're seeing a lot more interviews that are going virtual. So even your first, your second, your third round interview might be over Zoom. Do you have any tips on how to kind of translate some of these prepping for successful interview things for if it's going to be on Zoom?
Well, a couple of things. First, look the part. Okay, even though you're doing this with the Brady Bunch pictures, and you've got the small little pictures, you want to look your best. So make sure that, you're dressed appropriately, you're presentable. Even though you're doing this from Zoom, you might be doing it from home. You want to make sure there's no distractions. You don't necessarily want to have the kids or the kids, screaming and fighting and breaking into your office or whatever. You want to have that quiet space, and you want to be prepared. You want to, and again, employers are going to be looking for more of these situational behavioral interviews, which is what we're going to be practicing. So they're going to be taking some time. Of course, they've got probably 6 to 8 questions because they've got to go through these virtual interviews rather quickly, less than an hour. And so they're going to be very focused on skills, knowledge, abilities, and you're going to be able to, once you practice this, be able to supply them with this information very easily in a storytelling fashion. So, and again, you can prep for these virtual interviews, but again, practice and look the part. I've always said that, look the part, make sure that everything is, quiet and ready to go for the interview part. And again, remember, on these virtual interviews, they're going to be short. They're not going to conduct a 2-hour virtual interview typically. They just want to look at the skills and abilities and see if they can progress to the next level. So
thanks, Rex.
But it's a quick way for employers to get through a lot of applicants, I'll tell you that. So anyways, before you head out the door for the interview, you need to focus, you need to practice on those skills, abilities, and your knowledge that you possess that relates to the job description and the responsibilities that you're going to be looking for, or that you're going to be looking at. So, and you want to use it using what I call the SBO, Situation Behavior Outcome, SBO, not SOB, but SBO. Okay. And if you can approach sort of how you can relate your skills, abilities, and knowledge using the SBO format, it's going to give you an awful lot of confidence. It's going to give you the ability to tell your 3-minute story and to be able to illustrate and to address, to showcase and relate your best experiences with that particular job description's knowledge, skills, and ability. But you've got to practice, 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 practice. So well-rehearsed SBOs give you a lot of confidence that you can respond with very relatable, specific examples of your experience, rather than sort of just walking in cold and kind of generalizing or giving hypothetical answers, or trying to answer things too quickly. And again, you don't have that ability to give the best example of your experiences, of your skills. So you have to prepare more precisely for the interview. And what I suggest is that you create 2 SBOs, 2 situation behavior outcome examples for each job description KSA, each job description knowledge, skill, or ability that are very specific to that job description. That'll help your interviewer better understand the application of your knowledge, skills, and abilities. Particularly like if you were in the military, you've got the jargon and whatever. You may not have that experience in the business world, but you may have those skills that you obtained in the military or in, first responders. So again, you develop a KSA that can address those skills and abilities, and those skills are transferable even if you're not in the industry. If I'm looking for somebody who has a strong detail orientation, and let's say you haven't been in the business world, but you've done some other kind of work or even school work that involved strong attention to detail, you create that SBO. You can showcase that your particular skill, and how it relates to the skill they're looking for. It's very conversational, it's very storytelling. And again, you're going to stand out compared to others. Okay, it improves your communication, it improves your rapport building with the interviewer, and it builds your confidence. So, secret sauce, SBO, not SOB. Prepare for the specific interview. And what I do is I say, get flashcards and create 2 SBOs for each skill, ability that the employer is looking for based on that job description, and put it on that recipe card. And again, if they're looking for a particular skill, create the SBO situation, describe the background, Tell me about the setting. Tell me about the challenges or the problems you had facing you. Give me some context of this situation you were in, whether it was at a job, at school, budgetary problems, the military, whatever. Give me an idea of the circumstances or constraints you were in, and then tell me about the behavior. And this is really the heartbeat of your response. And this is where you describe those specific action steps you took. And this is a great time to demonstrate your aligned skills to those skills that they're asking for in the job descriptions. And you get to take credit for that skill. You get to talk about yourself, and don't feel bad about that, because if you're not going to talk about yourself, there aren't many others who are going to talk about you. And then what's the outcome? Describe what happened, good, bad, or not so good. And what was the lesson you learned? And again, this is your time to succinctly close your story. And what's interesting is, think about this. You're in the interview and they ask you a question about, tell me about a time where you had to do something that had to deal with a complex problem. And that happens to be one of your SBOs. Okay, so you tell them the situation, you tell them the behavior, you tell them the outcome, and then you say to them, I can give you another example because that's on the other side of your SBO card. Can you imagine they ask you a question, a detailed question, and you supply them a very story-like example, talking about the situation, the behavior, outcome, and then you turn around, you want to volunteer one more? Who's controlling the interview at this time? Who's got the confidence going into this interview? You do, because you're well rehearsed. You should prepare a solid and a relevant SBO for each relatable required knowledge, skill, or ability based on that job description. And if you can do 2 of them, that's great. And then practice them. The more you practice, the more you create this mental repository of these skills and abilities you have and how they relate to the job posting or job description of this employer you're going to interview with. Come on, you are going to do phenomenally well compared to if you hadn't practiced. So this approach, it allows the interview to discuss your background in memorable detail. Tell you how it works. Interviewer meets 3 applicants, asks the same question, gets 2 different answers, and then gets yours. And then when they go to relay the information to their hiring manager, they say, okay, this person, this is how they responded, this person, how they responded. Oh, and let me tell you about this person. Here's the situation they were in, here's what they did, and here was the outcome. Suddenly that's storytelling, using your stories to relate about you to somebody else. You are no longer the face that crowds are made of at that time. You will stand out, okay, because you're giving relatable stories that folks can use. If they ask you a hypothetical question, well, this job requires a lot of stress and a lot of deadlines. So how do you feel about that? Okay, well, if you've got that SBO created, you can say, well, let me give you a situation where I had a lot of stress with deadlines. Here is the situation, here's my behavior, and here was the outcome. Whoa, are you not handling that interview at that point in time? Are you not feeling like you now have a little more control? And the more control, the more confidence you have, the less anxiety you have over the interview process. And then it becomes real smooth and it becomes really a nice ebb and flow. But let me caution you, because I've had many people prepare for this and they've come back and they said, you know what? I think I came across as a know-it-all. I was so well prepared that I really had to take pause when they ask a question. So I'm telling you, if you practice this, you may have to learn how to sort of pause. When you're all done interviewing, you want to revise your SBOs. That's that continuous improvement part. So you can continually improve your interviewing, your communication skills, because this is all about you and getting that job. Okay, pay a lot of money, pay lots of taxes. You've heard that before. So practice. I have 12 recipe note cards with 12 different skills and competencies that I have built into those. And on the top of the card, I've got the KSA, and then on the margin, I've got SBO, and I write in the situation, behavior, outcome. What's really cool about that is that I've got 2 SBOs for each skill, and I can use these recipe cards anywhere. Okay, I can review them anytime. I can be sitting, waiting for the airport. I can be in my car. I can be at lunch. I can be on a Zoom call, or I could be at a fireside chat, and I'm practicing my SBOs. So how does Tiger Woods think that 20-foot putt for $1 million? He practices. He hits over 1,000 balls after every round. And again, Nothing's going to surprise him because he's practiced. Cardiac surgeon, pediatric cardiac surgeon operating on a premature baby with success. How did they do that? It's because they practiced. Michael Jordan, he always wanted to have that winning shot. He wanted the ball given to him so he could shoot that winning shot. How does he do that? He practiced. So to minimize anxiety, stress in the interview, not knowing what you're going to be asked, if you have a well-defined, well-rehearsed SBO story for each of those skills and competencies that you possess, that you can articulate, that pertains to that job posting, that job description, you are taking control. Suddenly you're in control. Everything's well laid out. You want to take that shot at interviewing. You're no longer afraid to go into the interview. And you may have to learn how to pause, okay? Because you don't want to come across so well rehearsed. But again, wow, you're in control. You feel much more confident. So quickly, here's some examples. SBO, dealing with planning and organizing. It could also be an SBO for attention to detail. Okay, if I'm involved in a complex planning, organizing situation, it could be also one about attention to detail. So what happens is you create these SBOs and they become interchangeable depending on the situation and what they're asking for. So if I'm planning, preparing for an interview, this is a great one. I always ask the individuals, so how'd you prepare for the interview? And they always say, well, I went on a website, looked up the company, went to Glassdoor or whatever. Well, occasionally I've had a few that talked about how they did planning and organizing for the interview and using the SBO. So here I am telling you how I plan for the interview, and I'm telling you about SBO, and suddenly now the hiring manager is going, does this individual know how to plan? Do they know how to prepare? I mean, they put this much effort into an interview. So volunteering for a group, creating a food drive, coordinating distribution, that can be one SBO, creating, coordinating, another, but it also can be about team building or directing. And then here's the killer statement. I hate this. I hate this killer statement, but it is very useful. At the end of the interview, do you have any questions? And they always ask you that. You ask a few questions and then they say, well, is there anything else? And what I would suggest you can do is, yeah, after reviewing my resume and going and working through the interview and talking about my skills and abilities, is there anything about my skills or experience that might give you pause from offering me the job? Okay, well, now that puts the interviewer on the spot. They can be honest and say, yes. Okay, and I'm concerned that, you have a great resume, great background, but I'm not sure you have enough experience in this area. Well, that gives you one more shot. That gives you one more bite at the apple to be able to say, if you've got it in your repository of SBOs, to be able to say, well, you know what, let me give you an example to highlight that particular skill or ability. It gives you one more opportunity. On the other hand, if the interviewer says, no, everything looks good, you get a sense of, how honest are they going to be? I hate that when I was asked that question, but keep that in your repository of interviewing. So just real quick, I've got a number of job descriptions here and talking about composing 2 SBO events for each of those knowledge, skills, and ability. Here's one, talking about problem analysis, decision making. Again, SBO, and again, a chance to illustrate your experience. And here's an actual job description for a digital forensic examiner. They were looking for meticulous, conscientious. Okay, do you have an example of being meticulous and conscientious? SBO, create 2 of them. And when they bring that up and they talk about meticulous or conscientiousness, you can have 2 relatable stories to talk about it in a very formatable way. Here's one on manufacturing IT risk analysis. Here's a penetration tester, senior associate, and they're talking about executing a plan. And so that's everything. We'll make this available to you, and feel free, if you have questions, you can email me the questions at my email address at the beginning of this presentation. And I think we're just about running out of time.
Rex, can I pop off real quickly with a question that was sent to me directly? I think it's a good one to ask. It's kind of a niche question. If you had a choice of what time of day for the interview, Do you have any hints on how to get the best results since interviewers might be seeing multiple candidates in that day?
As an interviewer, what energized me was when I had an applicant who was well prepared. So whether it was early in the morning, in the afternoon, or even in the evening, when you have an applicant who really is well prepared and has an awful lot to talk about and relate to that job, that's what's exciting for the interviewer. Okay, so I can go through a whole day and interview people who their faces, our crowds are made out of. They're indistinguishable from each other. And then suddenly you get somebody in there that you've interviewed, and they've got the ability to demonstrate those skills and abilities I'm looking for in such a way that it's sort of energizing and it's exciting. Oh yeah, that raises the energy level. So there isn't any real time as much as your presentation skills, your ability to relate.
Thank you, Rex. I think that's the answer I was hoping for. That's a perfect one.
You don't have to worry about it, Steve. You're just full of energy no matter what time of day.
Well, and I'll be honest, I was going to mention this at the end of this talk, and I, even though it was a little different, I interviewed for a doctorate program this week, and I actually incorporated 2 tips that you had mentioned in a previous orientation. So I don't know about, there might be folks on the call that feel the way I do. I have historically considered myself to be a wing it kind of person in interviews and in such. And I have learned that being able to prepare some of these stories ahead of time, so you have examples, can really do you a solid. And you come out sounding a lot smarter too. I'm sure you would agree with that, Rex.
Right. I apologize going through these slides so fast, but there's a lot of content. Dumped it into the slides, and hopefully you'll have access to these later for references, or email me with questions as well.
And I would encourage the participants that are in this call tonight to definitely reach out to us. We mean it when we say reach out to us. We want to be available to help, and I know Rex means that. And in addition to this being available, the slides and the transcript at a later date, I'd like to open up now. We have about I'm about to turn it over to Steve Ryder, but we have like 2 minutes. If there's any participants or students that are in here tonight, feel free to raise your hand or unmute real quickly if you'd like to ask Rex a question. This was a whole lot of information.
Yes, Rex, my name is Joshua. Thank you for sharing all this information. It's very helpful. Let's say we shoot our shot. Maybe I have to wait for another speaker to answer this, but during the interview, what is your recommendation on broaching salary? Should an individual, let's say the interviewer asks, what is the range that you're looking for? What are your thoughts on keeping that to yourself or bringing out a number?
Well, I've always said when it comes to negotiations, whoever goes first and states the number is the one who loses. Now, what I suggest is that when they talk about salary, you can say, well, I'm not as much interested in salary as I am in the challenges and the opportunities this position offers. And I suspect that the value this position has will certainly be reflected in the offer. And so you dance around that. Typically, what you don't want to do, and this could be illegal, particularly for women, is when they ask you the question, well, what salary range are you looking at? And in some states, that's prohibited because women are usually compensated about 80% of what men are in like positions. So when you ask them what their salary expectations are, they're going to be 80% of what a comparable male would be. So then you're just perpetuating the disparity in pay between men and women. Hence, you don't want to be asking that because, if your pay is, again, 80% of what, a male makes, and I give you that job, I pay you that money, I'm just perpetuating that disparity. So I kind of roundabout went about it, but again, it's an employee market. So I just push it back onto the employer and basically say, well, I'm sure that if I'm offered the position, the compensation and benefits will be, proportionate to the value you put into the job.
Great answer, Rex. I think we've got time for one more question if someone's got one.
Yeah, it
Rex.
looks like Jessica has her hand raised. I don't know if she had a question.
Thank you. Rex, I just wanted to ask, as far as the content for the SBOs, is it acceptable to use a personal life scenario in that, or should we stick with professional examples?
No, no, you can use personal, Jessica. I've often said it's transferable. Okay, if you're running, and I'm going to be, if you're running a Boy Scout troop, okay, that's like herding kittens. But if you can run it effectively, and you get into the planning, the organization, the recognition, all the things that goes into a well-run troop, those are skills that are transferable. And like I said earlier, I know a lot of housewives who are better planners and organizers than their husbands who I've worked with. So yes, they're transferable skills.
Great, thank you.
So I see 2 more questions, and I think that's all we will have time for. I'm going to go with the question in the chat first. Betta asks, when you get offered a job, should you always ask for a higher salary than they offer first?
Well, it depends on if you feel the salary's not quite where it needs to be, you certainly can do that. Okay, but there's a number of ways you can go about doing that. If you make it sort of, well, I need more money, or I think that, I need additional money, is that a yes or a no? Is that if I don't do it, you don't have the job? And what I've always said is, you can ask the employer, you can say, well, I was hoping for some additional compensation. Is there any room at all? And then if they come back and they say, well, I can do a little more, or no, there really isn't any room, you can say, then you go into, okay, well, what other kind of rewards can I ask for? Maybe can I get some additional PTO, some additional vacation time? Can we waive the 90 days for health benefits? Most of them can't do that. Can I waive the waiting restriction for tuition reimbursement? You have to be with an organization for a year or 2 before you get that. Can we waive that? So there's other things you can ask for that are not necessarily monetary, but could be some additional benefits, extra PTO, extra vacation, those kinds of things.
Okay, and we have a few more questions, but we are running out of time. So if we do not get your question answered, please go ahead and email Rex. Lee, I don't know that we will get to your question because I've seen Prudence with his hand up. So Prudence, you're going to be the last question. And then Lee, with your question, you can email Rex for that. So Prudence, go ahead.
Thank you for this presentation and the opportunity that you offering to us. My question goes straight about the formatting. What is the recommended when submitting or uploading your resume? Which format is the best? Is it a PDF? What document, or what kind of format is best? Since we have to go through a computer algorithm to scrutinize whatever we're doing, and also since it's a technical resume, part of the resume, if we have to provide with the link, so is it gonna be a problem because some link might redirect to some server where security or the algorithm will try to prevent to be redirect to another server or link that, I mean, I'm just asking this question because we will have all type of resume with a link. Maybe we try to showcase the project we work on, and then I don't know. So, well,
that's probably a pay grade above my experience. But let me tell you this: that most of the job application systems will specify what they're looking for. Are they looking for it in a Word doc, or a lot of times they'll tell you what they're looking for and how to upload it. Because again, as an employer, you're trying to make this as easy as possible. So, and again, I don't think I answered your question directly, but I don't think, employers are going to put too many obstacles in the way of you uplifting. If somebody else here has a comment about.
So I've got, based on my experience when doing interviews, when you do a Word document, there can be formatting issues when it's
Right.
going from yours to theirs. So I always recommend a PDF myself. Because again, Word, if you have a different version than they do, there can be then, and it could just not look pretty anymore.
And to your point, Chrissy, you know, when you receive these applications and they're not formatted correctly, there's a lot of information that is not on the resume when you get it. You know, there's paragraphs that are missing or lines of text that are missing. So again, my suggestion is always keep it as simple as you can. And if they require PDF, then submit it as PDF. So
Well, go ahead, Rex.
There's one other question. I know, Chrissy, you said we can leak and send it, but somebody else said they'd like to hear an answer to it.
Yeah, as well. And we'll go ahead and answer it. And then that will have to be the last one because we are going to run over time.
Yep.
So if you guys can stick around a little bit longer, we'd appreciate it. Yes, the question, let me find it.
So
Lee,
can you,
yes.
Lisa, can you still be
Lee. Can you
have
still
a master's degree and a few certs with no cybersecurity experience? Well, let me tell you, there's 590 some thousand jobs out there in cybersecurity, and only 68% of the people are able to fill those jobs. So yes, you can have a master's degree, and if you've got some certs, that certainly shows an employer that, you know, you're workable. I worked with an individual who worked in the cybersecurity division of an airline, and they couldn't find enough people in cybersecurity. They wound up hiring math students, okay, to be involved in their cybersecurity division because they felt that, you know, they're detail oriented, sort of analytical, and sort of they had those skills. So yeah, I wouldn't be discouraged at all for applying for positions if I've got the appropriate certs, but I don't necessarily have that cybersecurity experience. Mr. Warden, are you there?
I like what you said about math. I think, you know, it's funny because math is where computer science really started and this whole ball started rolling, so to speak. Yeah. But I think in this particular case, that makes sense to me. I just don't know, because the reality is so much of IT today is not necessarily whether or not you have a mathematical mind, but that you have the ability to use the tools intelligently that are already there for you. Yeah. That's what I would contribute. I would say this: if you have a master's degree, you have most of the basic skill sets you need to succeed. Yeah. Certainly in this program.
So with that, I have an individual I'd like to introduce, and he's part of our group on the CWCT program, and it's Steve Ryder. Steve is a program manager out of Chattanooga, and he's always encouraged us, if we're ever in Chattanooga, come visit him. So I'm sure he'll extend that invitation to all 75 of you. Interesting about Steve is that he's been a CIO, CEO, and he's at all these senior levels. But the most impressive thing I found about him is that he has synced his 4 or 5 different email accounts into one. And I'm just amazed at that. So with that, Mr. Ryder, I will turn it over to you.
I'm humbled by your introduction, Rex. Thank you. Well, to everybody on tonight, we trust that you found our session not only interesting, but that the content you will find you can apply to your career objectives. Let me ask you, if I can, take a minute, possibly by engaging the chat feature for the Zoom call, and answer this question: why did you decide to spend time on a Friday night on this fireside chat, and did you find it worthwhile? Take a moment now to think about that question, respond if you would. And personally, I'm a real big believer in writing things down. And for your well-being, as well as for the sake of our nation, I'll tell you, I'm part of this program, and your feedback to us is very, very valuable. So again, take a moment to write that down if you would. I'll continue if that's okay, but again, we'd love to hear from you. You know, some of you I've met in the past, most of you I haven't. As someone who started out as a trainee back in 1974 for a company called EDS, whose founder and CEO was a gentleman by the name of Ross Perot. For those of you who don't know him, Google him. He not only ran that company, he invented IT outsourcing. Also in 1992, he became the most successful third-party candidate in US history for president. And because I accepted his offer to be trained, I went from having a degree in history and then having been recently discharged honorably, of course, from the Army, I was able to put together a career over 40-something years that enabled me to, one, very comfortably raise a family, become a senior officer in some of the largest firms in America, including, as Rex said, a CIO for a $17 billion corporation, and a VP and general manager for a division in Hewlett Packard, or HP. So I really hope that you will take the very solid advice Rex has provided this evening, as well as some of my other colleagues. And believe me, Rex really does know what he's talking about and shared some great pearls of wisdom in his talk. I believe in what he has to say personally, because basically I'm living proof that that kind of advice works. As someone who has counseled more than 200 people over the last 2 decades, the common thread has been, of those I've mentioned, has been, can I improve my lot? Training is a key for a better job, not only today, but in the future. We do believe in lifelong training, and all of you, by the way, congratulations, were chosen from almost 6,000 applicants who applied for CWCT. It is all about applying your CWCT training, though, to begin or add to your current careers, using lessons such as what you heard tonight to enable you to secure one of those almost 600,000 jobs Rex mentioned. Remember this, the magic number in a job search is 1. That's the one job that is offered to you. We felt it was important to provide you the advantage of aiding in developing your careers. As for this session tonight, we will continue to host other fireside chats, with the next one focused on careers and interviewing on July 8th. Same time, same station. Please note that down on your calendar, and regularly check your Ivy Tech email for more information. But again, please put that date down so you have it available. Also, and this is so important, take a moment now also to write down 6 p.m. Eastern time on June 2nd. Steve Olson has already mentioned this, when we will host our next virtual job fair with employers from across the spectrum. Will include public entities such as the FBI. I know one of the state organizations, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, will be there, to some huge employers such as Bank of America, FedEx, Cisco, Accenture, Deloitte. We'll have some mid-sized firms, smaller ones, as well as recruiters who are in the business to place you in your next job. We will have at least 20 different employers share about their culture, employment needs today and in the near future, and how best to differentiate yourself from the volume of job seekers who just toss their resume via email. Also come to those sessions prepared to ask questions. We will have coffee rooms set up, so if you want to talk to the person speaking about the company, you'll have some time there. And please make sure you follow up with those employers. Just because you're on a call does not mean they're going to find you. It's up to you to reach out to those organizations. Remember what Steve said earlier, we're here to serve you. Rex has said that, Chrissy as well, during the time we've worked together. And so I suggest you reach out to your CWCT representatives. And in fact, what I'm going to do, I'm going to share a screen with that information. So you have all the emails for the people who are on, quote, recruiters, my peer group who are on the call today. It's up to you what you do with it. We wish you wonderful rest of your Friday night. Thanking you once again for being a part of this. And remember, reach out to us when you're in need. We're here to help. Thank you and have a great weekend.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thanks for that correction, Chrissy. I clearly was not listening well.
Yeah, I think I
You can
synchronized
probably
with you
stop.
on
You
that.
can probably stop recording, Steve.